Welcome back to the Billy Meier Books YouTube channel. I'm Mike Whelan. I'm here with Vivienne and we're in Hinterschmidt, Switzerland in May of 2025 to record our video series. For this topic, for this video episode, we're going to be talking about mistakes. And mistakes, by what we mean is, personal mistakes, and how it's normal for people to sort of hide our mistakes or not talk about our mistakes for fear of being judged. So I guess I'll let you start on this topic.
And I know that feeling very well. I know that I'm still afraid of my mistakes for fear of being judged, and we know where that comes from. It comes from, God's judgment. So for me it's very important to reinforce the correct way to view mistakes. It's very hard to get out of that thinking when you're raised in it, and it's one of those things that's pervaded our whole society. It's not just those who believe or have been raised in a religious background that fear God's punishment. It's a fear overall. We have a tendency to hide our mistakes, be ashamed of our mistakes, feel bad about them. But actually, our mistakes allow us to live and be free. And that's what I'm trying to teach myself through, painstaking training. Mm-hmm. What's your take on it, Mike?
Yeah, what Billy teaches, I think, is one of the most important things, is that mistakes are a source of learning, and that we really need to modify how we think about our own mistakes. If we make a mistake and we, in our mind constantly hit ourselves and beat ourselves up, there's really no point in that. It doesn't really do anything other than create sort of chaos and strife in our thinking and in our psyche. If we can change how we see our mistakes, when we make a mistake, we say, "Oh darn, okay, I won't make that again," and really see them as a source of learning and a source of evolution. It's far to say that mistakes are good. Well, in a very broad sense of all of life and of evolution, mistakes are necessary. That's the only way that we learn to change that behavior or to change that thought, is by making mistakes. And that's a core component of Billy's teaching, is that mistakes are a source of learning, and that we need mistakes. So it's sort of incumbent upon us to change how we feel about mistakes and how we think about mistakes and how we handle mistakes.
It comes back to the respect teaching. Respect the mistake.
Yes.
Respect the process of life. When a small child learns to walk, it falls over because it misjudged what it needed its body to do to move forward. We don't go, "Oh, bad child." You just think, "Oh, isn't that cute?" And off it picks itself up, it learns something, and off it goes. There's no big deal. And yet, when we become old and make the same sorts of mistakes, we thrash ourselves for it. So, it's going to be a lot of work just to recognise that we're even doing that. But then to take joy in examining each new mistake as an opportunity to learn and to actually change the thing that you've demonstrated to yourself was wrong, not just to sort of forget about it until you make it again. So it requires the discipline of respecting the opportunity, recognizing that it's good to be shown what you need to do, and doing it.
Yes. I wanted to make another point on your thrashing, that we thrash ourselves. It's really important not to punish ourselves for mistakes. Because I see that, at least in friends and acquaintances, that people tend to thrash themselves, like you said. They tend to be very hard on themselves when they make a mistake. Now, it's one thing to be hard on yourself if you're working through a mistake, if you're making a mistake over and over again. Maybe you step up the pressure, or maybe you develop some kind of system so you don't make the mistake again, or you have notes, or you change how you're thinking. It's one way, it's one step to do that, because that means you're working on correcting the mistake and not making it again. But to constantly punish yourself with thoughts and with feelings and with Gewalt, that's not right. It's absolutely not right, and it's counterproductive, because it creates fear, it creates guilt, it creates all these other psychological problems that are not necessary. Simply understand that you've made a mistake, recognize what that mistake is, and then work to change it, work to correct it. And the correction can be, if it's a thinking mistake, that you're working on your thoughts, when that thought comes up again, tone it down. I mean, when you notice that thought is coming up, the mistake thought, however that may be, or you notice, maybe you don't notice the thought, maybe you just notice those feelings coming up again, which are linked to the thought. Tone it down. I mean, you can notice that it's there, and it will sort of fade to the background. That's the way to approach, not to constantly beat yourself up and say, "Oh, I'm such an idiot," and I'm so stupid, and that's very prevalent in our society. And I wish, that's another one of Billy's teachings that would be so helpful in society, especially for self-confidence. We talked about in another video building up self-confidence and the will, and that would be much more helpful for those types of internal building, if we weren't so hard on ourselves every time we made a mistake.
Or weren't hard on ourselves. I mean, you can be thorough. You can sharpen your focus.
Mm-hmm.
Those things are neutral things. But any sort of, you use the word pressure. The pressure doesn't work. Just logical action. So this is the neutral, positive way to look at a mistake. So we can practice the whole teaching of neutral thinking when we look at our own mistakes and just examine the facts for what they are. But I keep coming back to this idea of respect. If you're giving yourself a thrashing, then you are disrespecting the value of the mistake, and yourself, of course. So it's just a matter of practicing the new way. I've got a couple of really nifty quotes, if I may.
Sure.
The Way to Live, number 215, says, "Whoever is great enough to learn from errors and to change his/her behaviour for the better is also great enough to be able to live." So, how beautifully that expresses. This is the way to move forward in your life. Respect it, love it, see it in the right perspective. If you can attend to your mistakes, you can live. That's a positive way to look at it. I think I put that on my wall.
Yeah.
And number 219, every human being has errors, but may one never eschew recognising and resolving them, whereby a further little bit of freedom is attained. So eschew, don't avoid attending to them, and it will bring you more freedom. So,
because you're less burdened by
your mistakes.
Yeah.
Freedom and life. Associate attending to errors with freedom and life.
Mm-hmm.
That's a better way to think about it.
Yes.
Number 240, to learn and progress, fight against one's own errors of thinking and actions and one's own villainy, not against the errors and spitefulness of others. That's the other thing. We're very intent on noticing each other's mistakes.
Noticing others' mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And scolding them.
Yeah.
Hypocritically. It's the same. It's the same mistake that we're making.
What's the quote in the Talmud Emmanuel or in the Bible? Remember, it said, "Before you take the splinter out of your neighbor's eye, take the beam out of your own eye," or something like that.
That's
yeah,
right.
That's essentially the meaning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is don't see mistakes in others first. See the mistakes in ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which ties in with, we talked about self-respect. We have another video in this series about respecting the rights and the psyches of others. It's the same. It's the same.
It's not your business.
Yes.
Their mistake is not what, you might have to deal with it and
If it affects you.
neutrally indicate how it's a problem for you.
Mm-hmm.
But how they correct their mistakes is not your business.
It's up to them.
Your business
Yes.
is you.
Yes.
And why is it that we have to look at someone else's mistake rather than our own? Because we can't stand the idea that we are making mistakes because we haven't come to terms with it as a natural process to be associated with freedom and progress.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's so basic.
Yeah.
Have you got more there?
I think I have one more point. I think you're right about that. It's so much easier to find mistakes in other people than it is in ourselves. And that's I think because it's painful. It's painful to admit that we make mistakes. It's painful to look at the mistakes and say, "Oh yeah, it's a mistake." It's far easier to deny. "Oh no, that's not a mistake." The ego comes forward. "Oh, that's not a mistake."
Mm-hmm.
Protecting the person. "Oh no, that's not a mistake."
Mm-hmm.
That's the ego that steps forward and does that. So it's far easier to say, "Oh, that you're making a mistake. You're making a mistake. You're making a mistake," and that don't see it in ourselves. That's something people could learn. A very simple thing people could learn from that.
And the whole topic of mistakes also needs to be looked at in regard to punishment. Jails and
For crimes. Yeah.
and so on. Of course, we've been told by this teaching and by the Pliaran that the correct way to correct serious criminal actions is giving people a chance to actually connect with the creational laws and recommendations so that they can learn. So if you just punish, mete out, harsh, painful punishments, all that does is teach someone that they're going to be punished if they don't do the thing, if they don't correct their actions,
Sure.
It doesn't teach them why the action was wrong. It just teaches them to avoid it, maybe, if they're afraid of the punishment. So the correct way to correct the mistakes is to be instructive. So when people in the Pliaran community, or perhaps not them, but they would correct the actions of serious criminals by making them do sort of hard labour, where they have to sort of use simple tools to grow food for themselves, this sort of thing, where they've only just got enough to do it, which would cause you to come to terms with what was required from creation for you to produce yourself. You would have to think about all those things. You would have to respect nature. You would have to understand what you needed to do by paying attention to what nature is, and thus reacquaint yourself with the laws of creation.
Yeah.
I find that fascinating business, because I think some of us do that to ourselves. We buy a block of land and then we work really hard to grow a potato. And I think some of us are trying to actually refamiliarise ourselves with the laws of creation, which are obvious in nature, which you cannot help but notice if you're trying to grow food. So it's correctional, it's informative. There's no point, and also Billy's book about raising children talks about the importance of not punishing and rewarding. If you do this right, I'll give you this. If you do it wrong, I'll smack you. Because all that teaches someone is to do it to avoid being hurt or to get a reward. It doesn't teach them why something should be done.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really important lesson for us to learn as well.
Yeah. I wanted to add on, you mentioned about crime, the punishment and things like that. In our society, or I can at least speak for the United States, when someone goes to jail for the crime, whatever the crime is, whether it's stealing or murder or whatever it is, once they've served their time, whatever that time is, and they come back into society, they really deserve an opportunity to become part of society again. But what happens is they're completely ostracized. Nobody wants to be around them. They're sort of isolated. It's tough to get a job. Now you have a criminal record, and that's a big problem, because once someone's made a mistake, whatever that may be, they've gone to jail, they've served their time, they come back to society, they deserve an opportunity to rejoin society as a normal human being part of society. As long as they're not going to make the same mistake again, they deserve that opportunity. And that's typically not the case. There's a large prejudice against people who have been in jail or prison when they come back out, and that's not right either. Because once you've made a mistake and you've done whatever society says to pay for that mistake, whether that's jail time or repaying money or whatever it is, then you deserve the opportunity to become a normal citizen. And that's also something that needs to change. Is these people do deserve an opportunity, and they should be welcomed back into the community. Because once you've made a mistake and you've corrected it or atoned for it in this case, then it should be left in the past. It should be left in the past just as a learning lesson. That's number one point. The second point I wanted to make is sometimes people will punish themselves constantly for a mistake they made in the past, continuously bringing it up in their mind, thinking about it, bringing these feelings up. The emotions come up and all bring themselves up into a big roar inside for a mistake they made years ago, and that's not right either. That should be mistakes that are made and that you've learned from it are in the past, and they should be left in the past. You can draw on them for inspiration to say, okay, I did that before, I'm not going to do that again. But to constantly punish yourself for something you've done in the past is not right. It's not the right thing to do.
It's not helpful. It doesn't achieve anything. It doesn't let you move on.
Yes.
Yes, I agree with the idea of when someone's corrected a mistake, they should certainly, it should just be left. And I mean, we all do it. It's just
Sure.
what we do. And some take the form of a serious crime that's leads them to have to be incarcerated. Although I have to clarify, of course, that what the Pliarian would say, and Billy would say, that is that people who've done serious crimes, and I think the assumption is they couldn't have gotten over their erroneous thinking, have to remain separated from the society for the rest of their lives. So that's sort of another category, people who really haven't changed because, that their thoughts are too entrenched that caused the crime. The teaching is harsher than we would do on earth, that you just don't let them back into society. But you give them a way of correcting it. So the chances of someone actually learning and correcting are much greater than they are here, where people do more or less just get punished and don't have to address the specifics of their crime. So both of those things have to be addressed, but that comes down to someone not correcting, not learning.
Yeah. Maybe there's mental health issues or something.
Right.
People that have to be incarcerated for life or separated from society for life.
Right. So there would be cases, just because they still need to learn.
Mm-hmm.
They need to learn from this circumstance that they find themselves in.
Yeah.
What it was that they did wrong, and other people do need to be protected from serious crimes. So that's another take on the whole situation.
Sure.
But it comes down to the same issue of coming to terms with the mistakes and also not belittling them, not trivialising them. We do impact other people with our mistakes and with our mistake about how to view mistakes. If I'm thrashing myself, that's no good to anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I need to be in a good state of mind to be useful to other people, not a self-abusive state of mind, which is what it is, So it affects everybody, how we view our mistakes.
Yeah. So have we covered this topic?
I imagine we have.
I think so.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
good. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Billy Meier Books YouTube channel. I'm Mike Whelan, this is Vivienne Legg, and we'll see you in the next one.